Welcome to Rates and Barrels, Tuesday, October 22nd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Britt Giroli here with you. On this episode, we answer a question that is kicking around. Is this the Dream World Series this year between the Yankees and Dodgers? The way this is lining up, we have star power. We have both teams that led their respective leagues in wins matching up. We've got everything you could possibly ask for. Two storied franchises meeting for the 12th time in the Fall Classic. That's kind of a surprising number as well. So we'll dig into a lot of aspects of this series. We're going to rank the starting pitchers that we expect to see in the series, talk about what compels us most about this matchup, and get a little bit of non-playoff news to discuss. The White Sox may be up for sale, according to a story Britt had on The Athletic recently, so we'll dig into that a little bit later on in the hour. But we're going to focus mostly on the World Series today. I'm starting at the top. Is this the Dream World Series? Jason Stark had this in his story on Monday. He wrote, how often does each league's highest win total make the World Series? In the wild card era, excluding 2020, this will be the fourth time it's happened. So that goes back to 1995. That was the first time it happened. Cleveland, Atlanta that year. We had a Yankees-Braves in 1999, and we had a 2013 matchup between the Red Sox and Cardinals, in which both teams led their respective leagues in regular season wins. So there's nothing anyone can complain about with this matchup, right? You know, am I safe to say that there's absolutely nothing any reasonable person
can complain about?
With the Yankees, you have
there's nothing in the world that is so good that nobody can complain about it. I'm sorry.
Whoa, nothing in the world? That's a whole series of podcasts to argue that. But what we have so many people who get frustrated and complain about playoff baseball is not like regular season baseball, and I don't want to watch the Diamondbacks and Rangers, damn it. Okay, you got what you wanted. You got a star-laden, huge payroll slugfest on tap. So what could anyone possibly be mad about?
I mean, if you're a fan of any of the other teams who got eliminated, this isn't your Dream World Series.
Sure,
but that's true every World Series, you know.
Yeah.
I saw Melissa Lockard. Melissa Lockard tweeted something like that. She said, "Is it always just like kind of a meh feeling in the World Series when your team's not in it?"
Yes.
And
hate watch it.
I think you hate watch it a little bit if your team was in and got eliminated, because I think in baseball, as much as any other sport, if your team was eliminated, you're still stewing about the handful of things that if they had gone the other way, those moments that could have flipped a game, kept the series alive, and maybe put you in that spot. I think it happens so fast, you're just not over it as a fan. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. But if your team didn't make the playoffs this year, this has been a very compelling postseason so far, right? So from the neutral observer, not dealing with recent scars of elimination, I'll ask the same question. In that context, like, what more could you ask for in this matchup, Britt?
You couldn't. And certainly MLB is celebrating this. This is going to be a ton of money. The television networks wanted this. These are two of the biggest markets that are now playing each other. So this is a big win, I think, for the health of the sport, because we're going to see some record ratings. We've already seen some record ratings. We're going to see records keep smashing. Like anytime Shohei Ohtani, who is a global brand, is playing on the biggest stage, look at the WBC and what that did. Anytime he is in the mix, like, it is a big deal. Anytime the New York Yankees, who outside of Ohtani are probably the closest thing we have to a global team, right? You could leave the country and see Yankee stuff and it wouldn't be weird. That's a good thing. So I do think it's good for the health overall of the sport at a time when we're looking at how to watch baseball and what is it going to look like. There's so much uncertainty with RSNs that we are getting a playoffs that prove that baseball can deliver on the national stage. There's exciting things that can happen, and it can captivate a national audience. So from that perspective, I think, yes, it is kind of a dream World Series. And I think the people that complain, well, these are the two teams that spent money and it's not fair. The league has years and years of examples of parity. And how, like, you have to go back no further, like you said, the Arizona Diamondbacks being in the World Series last year. So there is parity. There is opportunity for teams that don't spend to win. And let's keep in mind that the Dodgers are a great example of, a team that sure, we thought in the winter would be in the World Series. Did we think they'd look like this though? No, we didn't. So I think
they'd be in the World Series like 2 weeks ago. No, not really.
I think Dave Roberts, all of us picked the Padres. I think Dave Roberts deserves a lot of credit. This may be his finest managerial job to date.
I think it's also interesting that you're bringing up the health of the game because I think that's been the one thing where people have there have been some attacks saying, this is the best World Series that money can buy, and this is not a healthy situation. But people just do they not remember just last year? This is a graph from Neil Payne of the sort of payroll percentiles of the World Series teams. And you can see 2024, very top, 99th percentile, both of the teams. Yes, that makes sense. And, you could point at that and scream. But there's 2023 where it was 60th percentile. 2020 was 50th. 2008, we had two teams that were, underneath the 50th percentile. Now, I will say that there is a bit of a trend here, and it is that if you want to go to the World Series, more often than not, you have to spend higher than the average team. But that's not saying you have to spend the most in baseball to get there. And I think that's an important distinction, because if you say you have to spend higher than average, then there is still an incentive for teams to, even in the wild card era, to spend to get to the World Series, to create that depth that it takes. Because that's been some part of the story for the Dodgers is, oh my God, we lost everyone. Well, we're still the Dodgers. We still have some prospects. We still have enough to go trade for Jack Flaherty. We still have enough money. We paid $300 million. Yamamoto didn't pitch most of the season, but he's here now. It's money does help you with depth, and depth does become important even in the playoffs. And so I do think that this is actually, despite people saying it's unhealthy that this might be the two most expensive teams, I think it's actually healthy, because we have an example just last year of two teams that didn't spend as much, and now we have an example of two teams that spent a lot. And I think it would be unhealthier if we had a lot of teams that didn't spend a lot, make it all the way to the World Series, because there would be a disincentive to spend. There'd be a disincentive to improve your team. Your team would just be like, this is good enough. And do you really want that from your own general manager? Just be like, yeah, this is pretty good. We want to win 54% of our games. That's it. That's all we're looking for. I think you'd rather have a GM that said, no, in one offseason, we're going to spend $1 billion, because we want to win the World Series. So I think that's healthy, man. I think this is it's a good matchup for TV ratings. I think it's a good matchup for the financials of the sport and for the incentives of the playoffs and what we want out of teams. We don't really want a bunch of mediocre teams. We'd rather have great teams. And then hopefully the only thing that's sort of missing for me, and I don't know if there's something about baseball that does this, or it might be, but the very top stars, the two that you want to be on screens everywhere this whole week, and we have a whole week to do it, are not going to give us anything. We're not going to get any trash talking. We're not going to get really any insight. We're not going to get soft lens Shohei Ohtani, where he grew up, him showing us anything. We're not going to get access, really, to the biggest two names in our sport. They're not going to give us much other than, it'll be fun to face Ohtani. We'll get some vanilla quotes. It's kind of the Derek Jeterism, the Mike Troutism of our stars. And I kind of wish sometimes I look at other sports and I'm like, wow, that guy said what? Do we have a guy like that? We need to take Tommy Pham and put him in Shohei Ohtani's body. Because I think we have a whole week to fill. What are we going to fill it with?
Yeah. Well, but if you look what teams were remaining, you mentioned Tommy Pham, he's not a star. What stars were we Bryce Harper, maybe Manny Machado?
Yeah, Harper's pretty good. Machado's pretty good. Yeah, Tatis would have said something, I think.
I don't know if they would have said something, but their play is a little bit more overstated, right? They have a little bit more flair. So I agree with you there.
Maybe it's actually something that's happening across all sports, that access and media is treated as more as the enemy, and they're not You know, they feel like, you know, if they're going to be vulnerable, like it'll turn on them. You know, maybe it's, you know, social media, you know, they don't really necessarily want to say anything that'll turn into something bad. You know, it's something that happens in PR over time, as you notice, oh, they'd rather have no story than a bad story.
Yeah. No one wants to hear us complain about media access, though, leading up to this World Series. I think
I'm not pleading for media access. I'm pleading for, like, you know, some fun storylines. And we have, like, Judge versus Ohtani, and that's great. But how many times can we talk about it without them giving us something to talk about? That's what I'm saying.
Well, the game has shifted, though, because you mentioned Derek Jeter, and I actually was in New York in 2009, last time the Yankees won the World Series. That was a really fun team. AJ Burnett used to carry around a WWE belt and give it out to the player of the game. They had Nick Swisher, ton of personality. CC Sabathia wasn't afraid to speak his mind, still isn't, in his post-playing career days. So, yeah, there was Derek Jeter, but that Yankees team in 2009 was a bunch that had a lot of personality. I don't think you could just hang this on Aaron Judge. You know, Yankee Stadium, the atmosphere is just different than what it was. The team is different than what it was. So I don't think it's just Judge. You know, I think that the 09 team had a lot more characters.
As I'm saying, I think it's a little bit more about, you know, how players generally perceive the media, generally perceive stories, how PR perceives stories, and how you know, that has led to, you know, a little bit less in terms of personality, you know, shining through.
I can live without manufactured hype because I think there's enough natural hype here anyway. This is the first time a World Series is going to feature 5 players across the 2 rosters that have won MVP awards before. I think we saw the personality of Juan Soto shining through after the Hunter Gaddis home run. Like, I think, and the Yankees as a team too, both of these clubs, like they're enjoying themselves out there. You could see it. Anytime the Yankees hit a big home run in the ALCS against the Guardians, they were over the rails, just going nuts.
They couldn't make it to first base without celebrating with their team.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like we're very comfortably back in the let the kids play vibes right now with 2 teams that actually have veterans on them too, which I think is also good and healthy for the sport.
8 Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers.
Yeah, absolutely. So
depends on what you think of Stanton and Cole. I mean, that's where you get sort of 7 and 8.
Yeah, I think both have done enough to lay the groundwork, and then there's the how does the rest play out part that will still matter for both of their respective cases. But what compels you most about this matchup, Britt? I mean, as you think about all the different storylines, like what kind of jumps up the most to you? What are you most excited to see as these 2 teams match up? I think the bummer is that we have to wait until Friday for it to start. That's where Eno's frustration with the lack of storylines comes from. That tension is created by a break that's probably a day or 2 too long. I wish we were starting up on Wednesday.
Why couldn't they just say the World Series starts 3 days after the conclusion of the NLCS?
Of the later championship series. Yeah, whichever one runs longer. Yeah. 3 days later it starts, because then you know what the built-in rest is already.
3 days is enough. They travel, they have a day to lead up, maybe you have one dead day. You're not sitting here like,
you know what the stakes are as a team too, because if you could be like, should we go for the throat, or, you know, leave a starter for tomorrow and try to win it with our, you know, our B team or whatever.
Because this year was the first year, for those who aren't aware, that they could have pushed the World Series up if both teams had finished in 5 games. Now both teams didn't. A series went 6. And so we have to deal with all these extra days. And I guess I just don't understand, and I have not called the league to find out why not. They can't just announce it will start X days after the last LCS ends.
So my guess, when they return your call, I wonder if they'll point to the preference of having Friday, Saturday twice. Because the series begins on a Friday. You have a travel day on Sunday. So you don't have to overlap football, which I think is smart. I don't think you want to overlap with the NFL. That's just dumb to compete with the NFL, right? So you go Friday, Saturday, off day Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off day Thursday, and then you get Friday, Saturday again. So I think they've left it alone in this case because I think the days line up exactly the way they want to get as much attention as possible on the series. I think that
isn't
may
this
have
about
been
the length of time that we were all discussing? Where
it's like literally as long as the break. It's the bye break. It's the same for the teams that don't play in the wild card round. It's the same amount of time off that both teams are getting.
Maybe we should
be
betting on pitching in this series.
I get that it was set up that way, Derek. But they were going to push up the series to start Tuesday. That doesn't give you 2 weekends.
Right. I don't know why they would have done that. Like, I just think
it seems so binary. It's either Tuesday or it's Friday. It's like
Friday. That's why I don't understand why they can't say it starts X amount of days after whatever.
Like, if it started Tuesday, it would have been Friday, Saturday. They would have had a Sunday for a game 5, but they still would have hit a Friday, Saturday. I think Friday, Saturday is important to them. Like, I think that's a really those 2 nights matter in terms of how they plan coverage.
But let's back to the question at hand. Like, what are the most what are the compelling storylines? Not
network executives
not the
are compelling,
access or the rest days. Those aren't the ones.
As we sit here and get way off topic. We have a lot of air to fill this week. What compels me? The lineups, because this isn't going to be like it's funny. You would think with the 2 best teams, the 2 highest win totals, we'd see these like juggernaut pitching. We're not going to see it. We're not going to see it at all. So to me, the most compelling thing is like we were talking about the Ohtani versus Judge, the Sotos, what Freddie Freeman is going to look like, Mookie Betts. Like, it is the lineups. It is the star power in these lineups, I think, is why you are tuning in. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, that like every time Shohei Ohtani is like almost going to come up, they've been advertising that. One, I think that hopefully they stop that because there's just a lot of other stars. And 2, it just kind of tells you where the attention and the eyeballs are. It is on these big stars. So to me, what I want to watch is what these guys do, is what these lineups do. And I think everyone is expecting that this isn't going to be a 4 or 5 game series. So we're going to see these stars come up in big spots over and over and over again. And I think that's where we're going to see these incredible moments, kind of akin to Juan Soto's 10th inning home run, right? That got the Guardians eliminated. That was theater. We're going to see a lot of theater, I think, with these at-bats, or at least I hope so.
Yeah, what is interesting is that the last 3 World Series that you mentioned that included the 2 best teams did not they were uneven. The Braves one, I remember, I was like, is that the Andrew Jones one? Nope, it was not the Andrew Jones one. It was the Yankees sweep the Braves and outscore them 21-9 with only one of the 4 games being really close at all, which was the Chad Curtis walk-off in Game 3. So it's not a guarantee actually that this goes long just because they're both very good teams. There could be some shift. I think the shift might come from, as much as we talk about the lineup, if somebody's pitching staff shoves, then it'll be over quickly, because you do think that, the lineups will get through. But if there's a pitching staff that shoves, if Cole comes out and shoves, if Yamamoto comes out and shoves, that changes the whole tenor. So I'm still looking at the pitching. I'm also, I think, looking at, last year you had Corey Seager as the World Series MVP. That's the, let's watch Betts and Ohtani and Judge and Stanton and Soto. That's Seager, But the year before was Jeremy Pena. We had Steve Pearce in 2018.
Yeah.
We had Pablo Sandoval in 2012. David Freese in 2011. That was an amazing series for him. Edgar Renteria.
Never mention David Freese's name on this podcast ever again.
Anyway, so I think that there's still compelling pieces down lineup for both of these teams. Enrique Hernandez, plays over his skis in the postseason, and you've got Volpe playing pretty well this postseason. Verdugo even had some big hits. So this is a guy that has been reviled in New York all season. So I think it'd be kind of cool if there's a game, the redemption game for the Yankees, where Verdugo has the winning hit and Clay Holmes gets 5, clean outs in the middle of the season. Those are the 2 guys that I think most Yankees fans wanted to throw off the playoff roster and not even have them here. So there's still some like personal redemption stories in here. There's star power. There are bit players that could, make huge impacts. It's kind of hard to zero in because these are great teams all around. And I think, I'm circling these like down lineup names. I still think Volpe's got a big hit in him. I don't know. Tommy Edman had his day in the sun already, so I don't know who I'm circling down lineup for the Dodgers.
Yeah, for the Dodgers, I mean, the guy that's struggled is the guy that's been hurt. It's Freddie Freeman. Like, he just hasn't looked like himself, and for understandable reasons. I think he's, other than the relievers, probably the most overjoyed player of the long break, because maybe he'll feel better by the time the series starts. That it's not gonna be 100%.
He looked pretty bad. He was hobbling around.
But even if he's 20% healthier than he was by the time the NLCS ended, I mean, he didn't even play in Game 6. Like, maybe that's something that gets them.
Have you ever seen a tape job like that?
No.
But I didn't actually notice it.
Oh.
I've seen a lot of ankles taped from coaching soccer, though.
Outside of his shoe. Have you seen that in soccer?
It reminded me of hockey, honestly. It reminded me of a hockey injury.
They taped the outside of his foot. So they must have taped it inside, but then they put the foot in the shoe and then taped the foot into the shoe. So
he couldn't move at all. They do that in basketball, too, to prevent the rolling. They tape really like that in basketball, too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen football cleats just wrapped in entire rolls of tape, but I haven't seen a lot of that in baseball.
In baseball, right? Yeah.
What compels me most about this matchup? How will Freddie Freeman's ankle be taped in the World Series?
We're really hitting on.
We're really getting in the weeds. Join us all week.
No, I think the player that I'm most curious about for the big stage in the World Series is Jazz Chisholm. I think you've also mentioned it a couple points. You know, you're like expecting a big moment from Jazz, and they've generally haven't been there, right? He's been pretty bad so far. 147, 216, 265 this postseason. It's a slash line that's even a little worse than Verdugo's. More strikeouts, a bad base running blunder that didn't end up changing the ALCS, but it was a part of a bad sequence for the Yankees. I think he's a guy that could use a couple of big swings on the big stage. So I'm just kind of curious to see if it comes together for him. Judge was struggling to begin the postseason. We'll see if he rises to the occasion. I imagine he probably will. But I think Jazz is sort of that player I've got circled on the Yankee side. I'm like, all right, what are we getting from you? We need something from you in this series.
Yeah.
The strugglers
Here's
for the
your trash talker.
Are Will Smith and Gavin Lux, other than Freddie Freeman. Yeah. Gavin Lux hasn't been hitting for power, and Will Smith showed some signs. They said he's really grinding in the cage, and I think he should do the opposite. Because we pointed out how badly catchers do in the postseason. I think he should take a breather and take some rest, and do less. Less is more. Will Smith.
Yeah, I think if Jazz was playing better, you would maybe hear him talk more. He's already said some bulletin boardy things. I also think the Yankees probably pulled him aside and said, "Hey, bro, it's not what we do here."
Yeah, maybe.
But there's a guy who can say some stuff. He's just not playing well.
Yeah, but a couple of swings could change everything pretty quickly. So I mentioned the series schedule earlier, Friday, Saturday for the games 1 and 2. We know Garrett Cole's going in game 1 for the Yankees. I don't think they've announced Carlos Rodon for game 2, but it's probably the safest assumption at this point because rest will have been there. The Dodgers will have more than the 5 days rest that they give Yoshinobu Yamamoto before starts. But I think their decision's a little more complicated because of the way they've had to use their bullpen. So tactically, thinking about the way the Dodgers could order their pitchers, would you want to split Yamamoto and Flaherty in a way where one of them pitches game 1 or 2 and the other actually gets the first of the 3 games that are stuck together because of the way you're trying to use your bullpen? What do you think the best approach is given the overall?
I think you could do that for
approach?
The Yankees too. Is that Rodon might be able to go a little bit further into a game than Clark Schmidt, and the reason is Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is the top of the lineup. The third time through the order, Carlos Rodon. Who would you rather leave in against Shohei Ohtani for a third time? Carlos Rodon, because he has the platoon advantage. So you'd at least be a lefty on lefty. How much better could you do than a 96-mile-an-hour throwing left-hander against Ohtani? So what you might want to do is pitch Carlos Rodon in game 3 because he could go a little bit deeper and you won't empty the bullpen as early in game 3 where it's 3 games in a row. So in fact, I think the argument should be made, whoever you think goes deeper goes in game 3. Because you can go 1 and 2 is like Clark Schmidt. Maybe you do Clark Schmidt in game 2 and you use a lot of the pen, but you have that extra off day afterwards. And so who is that for the I don't know.
That's exactly
the Dodgers right now.
That's the problem. I was gonna say they don't have the Garrett Cole. They don't have like
you don't
Flaherty.
know how deep Yamamoto's going to go.
Yeah.
Flaherty hasn't looked 90s.
Good. Yes, velocity's been the last 2 starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Walker Buehler's not a guy you can trust and go, he's going to get us through X amount of outs. I don't think they have that. I'm really curious what they do here. I don't know if there's an easy lane here if you're Dave Roberts and the Dodgers. Like with the Yankees, like you guys were saying, like let's have it set up so that the guy who gives us length goes 3. I don't know if the Dodgers have that.
They're hoping Yamamoto gives them length in 1, and if he doesn't, then you're already in the pen.
Yeah, and I think if you get into the pen too early in the first 2 games of the series, then the problem catches up with you in that middle 3 block when the Yankees hitters might be getting their 3rd, possibly their 4th look in Game 5 at some of your more important relievers, assuming those games are close and you're winning. Otherwise, they're getting multiple looks at your worst relievers, which seems like an even bigger problem because those guys are even more hittable.
Maybe you just say, we lost those. So, one of the things that's kind of cool, Eric Steven from True Blue LA, before Game 5, did like a little thing where he showed all the Mets and who had faced, relievers had faced which Mets. And before Game 5, they only had 2 late game relievers, good relievers, that had faced anybody in the Mets order twice. So Treinen had faced Lindor twice, and Brazier had faced Alonso twice. But Henriquez had faced guys 3 times because he was the guy that came in when they were losing the game. That's why they had these blowouts. Yeah. They were just like, Henriquez, here you go. Who's, Kasparius, good luck. When that series finished, they still... Nobody had faced anybody 3 times except for Brazier against Alonso, and that was probably more key than people realized because Alonso came on with people on base, and he was facing Brian Brazier for the 3rd time. When you face a reliever for the 3rd time, it's just in a series. It's just like facing a starter for the 3rd time in a game. That was kind of a key moment. I think the Dodgers wanted that to happen, but at some point they're like, one of our guys has got to see him 3 times. But what you're saying is, the earlier you go into the pen, the more likely it is Soto gets to see Ryan Brazier for the 3rd time. And if Soto gets to see Ryan Brazier for the 2nd time, I'd already start to be worried.
Yeah, if Soto sees Ryan Brazier 3 times, Soto's probably hitting one to the moon that 3rd time. That's the concern.
Who's better, Ryan Brazier or Hunter Gaddis? Hunter Gaddis,
yeah. Not by miles, but I mean, look what just happened, right? And we were talking about the difficulty of pitching to Soto in that sequence, and we're like, well, maybe we would have done this differently. And we found some other Guardians plate appearances where they tried the thing we tried, and the Yankees made them pay for that too. So there's no easy pass through. But I think the question I have for both of you is, how would you rank the starting pitchers that we expect to see in this World Series? I think it's actually a more challenging exercise to do this in October than it is to do it at the beginning of a season the way we do in fantasy, when everybody's kind of building up and everybody's healthy at that time, and we're looking at a long runway. And now we're dealing with all these variables of, Garrett Cole pitched really well throughout the second half, but hasn't been as sharp for all of his playoff starts. We know Yamamoto's not getting as deep into starts right now as he could at various points during the regular season. You think about different guys that maybe could face the top of the order the 3rd time. Mentioned the possibility of Rodon at least seeing Ohtani the 3rd time before possibly coming out of a game. Clark Schmidt's historical struggles against lefties that haven't been as much of an issue this year. Recent form of Flaherty. Buehler having better stuff at Citi Field, but that might have been the result of environmental park conditions that were unique to Citi Field. That might not be there if he's pitching at Dodger Stadium or even at Yankee Stadium. So it's this whole mess of added variables. So starting at the top, do we agree that Garrett Cole is the guy we'd all want on the mound if we're facing an elimination game? If we could choose any starting pitcher from these 2 teams today and it were a Game 7 scenario, is Cole the guy we would all want?
Well, no, I'd want a healthy Shohei Ohtani.
Not an option. Not on the menu.
I'd like a healthy Cole.
I think The problem here is we're like, you know what? These two teams are not built on pitching staffs, but let's discuss the pitching staffs because
It's gonna matter.
they're really not going to factor in. I do think it's going to be. I would go Cole. I would certainly trust him the most right now, but you're right. It would look totally different this spring. I think I go Rodon before I go Yamamoto right now.
See, I think that's where it actually gets the tightest, because you could make a pretty easy case where it's just like you can almost just stagger them, right? Cole, Yamamoto, Rodon, Flaherty, Schmidt, Buehler. You could kind of do that, but I actually think the hardest to rank is Rodon versus Yamamoto, because Yamamoto, healthy, built up, with extra day of rest, like he doesn't throw without that extra day of rest. So can you give him that extra day of rest? All that sort of stuff. If Yamamoto's feeling at his very best, I think I take him over Rodon. But right now, Rodon seems to be maybe a little bit closer to his best. I mean, he really has settled down into something that's really great, where he's mixing his pitches. The command is decent enough, and the stuff is there. He's kind of harnessed that intensity. I think I'm going to go Yamamoto over Rodon, but I think that's really close. I think it's basically a tie.
Okay, so if we're talking about the MLB The Show scale, you're putting like an 80 on present Rodon and a 79 on Yamamoto. They're that close, but Rodon ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a little bit higher than that.
Higher numbers than that. Okay, I haven't played the show in a while, but I'm also trying to account for October.
They're a bunch of 98s and 100s and 99s. So I think a healthy Cole is is 100.
Yeah, sure.
This current Cole is like a 96.
Oh, okay. So I'm taking way too many points off everybody. Okay.
You don't usually play with 80s that much unless you're really just starting out. So
ridiculous system. Guy who hasn't played game is upset.
So I think that's a pretty good top three. Do you go Flaherty 4? Even though his velo's been down, he's looked questionable. I think you probably do.
It's a good slider. It's he can still get outs on the slider. I do. One thing I'm looking at. I don't know do you think any pitcher goes 5 full?
I know. That's the thing. We're sitting here ranking the starting pitchers, and I don't think this series is gonna have much to do with the starting pitch. It's gonna be one of those series where we're like, oh, they had those guys pitch in that. Like it's gonna be so dominated by the hitters. I don't know if they go 5.
In these CSs,
Cole,
this actually
Cole
helps.
Could go 5.
He could go 5, but he didn't. And in the CSs, the guy who went the furthest was Carlos Rodon, which goes to my argument about it's a little bit easier, I think, to take a lefty into the third time through the order, because you're still getting some platoon advantage at the top of the lineup.
All right, so we've got Cole as a consensus 1.
What if you put Betts lead off against Carlos Rodon?
Yeah. So we got our top 3.
You're taking a plate appearance away from Shohei Ohtani?
Do you think you take a whole plate appearance away from moving Betts to 3 and Shohei to?
Well, you're risking it. I mean, it's not. You would never.
I'm not taking like a has-been or a terrible player.
No, you're putting Mookie Betts in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
might make it a little bit harder to massage Carlos Rodon through a third time through the order if Mookie Betts is at the top of the lineup.
Yeah, I could go Flaherty 4. Everyone's in agreement on Flaherty.
I have Flaherty. Yeah, who is he over?
Clark Schmidt. I don't know. I might take Clark Schmidt over Flaherty right now. I might,
and
because
he's over Buehler.
Flaherty, we have talked about Flaherty a lot ever since the trade deadline a year ago. The season he put together in Detroit and during his time with the Dodgers, phenomenal. Great bounce back, great story. He's going to get paid this winter. He's going to get a multi-year deal. It's going to be a big number. Great, good for him. I just worry, especially if the velo is going to be inconsistent. We've talked about the importance of where his fastball lives and how quickly it turns. I don't know, man. It's like he cruised through 7 his first time out against the Mets, and that looked amazing. And I was like, well, Jack Flaherty's all the way back. He's cruising through this postseason the same way he did the regular season, and then just got rocked that second time through. And now I'm shook by it.
One of the
it's
most
hard to face the same lineup though that quickly again. That is something that usually.
But also his velo is down, and one of the most predictive, the two of the most predictive stats in baseball for pitching are actually fastball velo and strikeouts minus walks. If you want to take stuff plus out of it, so his fastball velo is the worst out of this crew of starters, and Jack Flaherty's K-BB is the worst out in the playoffs. Is the worst out of any of these starters. He has a 12% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah, so I think I'm Schmidt over Flaherty. If you want to keep Flaherty in that 4 spot, you guys can have him there. But I think I also just like Clark Schmidt's pitches better. I think your model likes that arsenal a lot better. So I'd rather trust that arsenal that has good secondaries a lot more. And I think the adjustments he's made against lefties at least give Schmidt a chance against them in a way that prior to maybe this season, I would have been a lot more nervous about the chances of him getting through at least twice against the Dodgers lefties.
But he's got Muncy, Ohtani, and Freeman. This is where Freeman's injury actually, might make a big deal. Is for Clark Schmidt, because he's going to struggle with the lefties, but he could maybe do something where he just walks Muncy and Ohtani, depending on the lineup situation and who's on base, and goes after Freeman because Freeman's not who normally is. So those are the 3 names you have to circle in a Clark Schmidt start for sure.
Okay, so in some order, Schmidt, Flaherty, probably 4-5, and then Luis Heel behind him for sure, or Buehler comes next. Like,
well, the thing that's nice about Heel, I think I'd take Buehler over Heel, but the thing that's nice about Heel is he's that extra guy for the Yankees. I mean, we're not putting a name in across from Heel.
He's
so
not
it's bullpen. It's
right. So
Johnny
it's
Holstaff.
like Landon Knack versus Luis Heel. Yeah, I'll take Luis Heel.
But it's like it's Michael Kopech and Ryan Brazier and Evan Phillips, and Daniel Hudson. It's all of those guys against,
and that's fine. And we talked about this a little bit before we got on the air. It's like it's hard to really appraise a bullpen game, because I think in the past we thought a bullpen game is something you do when you have no other choice. And so a bullpen game, you would give the advantage to an actual starter in most of those. But I don't think that's the case. We've watched enough bullpen games where the team wins with it, And I think the only problem with the bullpen game is the earlier you do it in the series, the more you make it hard to do the finagling they did in the Mets series, where you're like, you don't have, Soto facing one of these relievers for the 3rd time, And you can play that game in a shorter series. But even if that Mets game had gone to Game 7, now you're going to start to see everyone see Blake Treinen the 3rd time.
Yeah.
And before that game, there were like 5 relievers that had pitched 27 innings and given up 0 runs altogether. Kopech, Treinen, Banda, all these guys, right? In that last game, they faced them 2nd and 3rd times, and they still only gave up 3 runs, but they gave up more runs. The more times you see the relievers, the better they are. So if they do bullpen game in Game 3 or Game 4 even, when they get to Game 7, they're going to be putting relievers out there that these guys have seen repeatedly.
Yeah, or even a starter from earlier in the series for a couple of innings, and you've seen that starter twice already. So it kind of gives you a greater appreciation for Madison Bumgarner hero ball from 2014. Like, just the more you see how teams are chopping up the workloads and still struggling to get through, even with great stuff. You know who the pitcher is that I'm actually the most worried about for the Yankees, though, if they overexpose the usage? It's Luis Heel. And it's not because I don't think Luis Heel's a good pitcher. It's because I think Luis Heel, in a lot of ways, is the flaws of the Mets wrapped up into a pitcher on the Yankees, where he can miss bats, but the elevated walk rate as a result of inconsistent command is going to make him really, really vulnerable.
So a little Edwin Diaz-y.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm sure the Yankees have a reduced plan for Heel. And I think
Yankees had like a 395 OBP. I mean, the Mets had the Dodgers had a 395 OBP against them.
Right. So when you look at a pitcher like Heel and the possibility that Nestor Cortez rejoins the roster, it will be as a reliever. It's not going to be like Nestor Cortez going 5 or 6. But
that's their bullpen day. It's like, get 5 outs from Heel, get 5 outs from Cortez. That's actually a pretty interesting combo too, because lefty righty, you can bring Cortez out when you see Ohtani the 2nd time, and
then you might get 6 combined between the two. Like, if everything goes well, you can get 6 combined from them. No, 6 innings.
Oh, 6 innings, maybe.
6 is like the max you could probably get from both combined. But even if they gave you 4 or 5 and didn't give up damage, and you got through the lineup one time with them, that's still, it's not that bad. Like, that's 3 innings, and Yeah, the Dodgers bullpen is going to do the same thing. It's going to use 2 pitchers to get to the lineup one time, at least one time in this series, maybe twice to start a game.
Yeah.
So I feel okay about like a heel Cortez versus a bullpen day. Like I'd almost pick the Yankees on that one too.
I think I like it better with Cortez back than I do if the Yankees had to throw 1 or 2 short relievers in that spot behind heel. That's actually kind of a big deal to get
they
Cortez
actually
back,
don't have the bullpen depth that the Dodgers do, and
Right.
they can't do that. They won't be able to do the thing where like we have 6 credible relievers, and so you'll never see our guys 2 or 3 times. No, they have like 3 or 4 credible relievers, and that's it.
Right. And I think that's where, like, even if the story in the World Series is more about the position players and slugging, I do think what each team gets from its starting pitching will be really important, because that's going to determine just how beat up the relievers get, and that might ultimately decide the series.
I can't help it. I'm circling Nestor Cortez, and Anthony Banda. Those guys are going to be huge.
Yeah.
X Factor.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like the collective edge, though, across the board is we like the Yankees group of starters better at this point in the season.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the Dodgers relievers. We're going to break them down in detail with Trevor May on Wednesday. But I think the Dodgers bullpen being better or deeper than the Yankees bullpen offsets most, if not all, of this gap. So if you were grading pitching as a whole, do you think it's an even matchup in this World Series between these two teams, even if we like the Yankees starters better than the Dodgers starters at this point in time?
I give the Yankees a slight edge because I think, like we said, in a series that people are thinking is going to go 6 or 7, you still need starters. You still need guys to get you more than an inning or 2. And I think that's going to show up in games 5 and 6 and 7 if we have them. So I still give the Yankees a slight edge. You're nodding, so you agree?
That's exactly. I write the pitching matchups for each of these, and that's exactly what I wrote. I wrote, I think that the longer the series goes, the more the Yankees' advantage in the bulk pitchers is going to matter.
Yeah.
So a 97-96 score favoring the Yankees based on the MLB The Show. Am I getting it right now? It'd be a 97-96.
Neither of these pitching staffs were top 5 in the big league, so this actually might be more like a 93-92.
God, I'm going to find it eventually, I promise everyone. And the reason I don't play MLB The Show is because I would do literally nothing else in my life if I started playing it. I know myself. It would just be an obsession. I'd be streaming.
I'm actually happy
Twitch.
that my child has found other games to play, because that one was actually, he's like, do you want to pitch this inning? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, there goes 20 minutes, right? You just
exactly
sucked in and life goes by. All right, so we got some non-playoff topics to get to. Britt had a story that Jerry Reinsdorf is open to selling the White Sox. It's hard to make White Sox fans excited about anything in October because of the mess Jerry has created. But Britt, is this real, or is this like the time that Artie Moreno was going to sell the Angels and then laughed and said, haha, no, I'm not selling the Angels. I'm going to keep them?
So that's what people keep asking me, like, is it real? And like, I wouldn't have reported it if it wasn't true. People keep asking if it's true. And like, it's true. The question is, like you said, is it real? Is it going to happen?
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody can answer that right now except Jerry Reinsdorf. I do think a few things here. So I do think that the losing this season weighed on him more than people realize. I think that their RSN, which has had issues for years in a bad economy, I think that team is losing money. You heard Jerry already say the payroll is going to go down, which went over like one would expect, like a lead balloon. I think for the first time, maybe since he bought the team, he is thinking about, okay, should I get out here? He's 88 years old. Even if he sells it as a path to control that takes 5 years, again, he's 88 years old. Is he going to be around at the end of those 5 years? Right? We don't know. And also, a big part of this, too, is the stadium that he's trying to get public money for that nobody is giving public money for. So if he's not going to get the stadium he wants, which would lead to better profitability, and the team is losing and losing money, I think these are things that have now finally forced him to consider other options. And people said, well, he did this before. Well, he didn't. He threatened to move the team to St. Petersburg to get guaranteed rate field built in 1991. He never has said, I'm open to selling the team. And that's what makes this interesting. Now, David Stewart, of course, who he remains in conversations with, and I think they're meeting again like next week, is what sources had told me. So this is like an ongoing thing. David Stewart, of course, wants to own a team, was heavily involved in trying to bring a team to Nashville at one point, tried to buy out Oakland out of their share of the Coliseum, the city of Oakland at one point. So, I think for Reinsdorf, of course, he's going to do it Jerry's way, and he's going to go to people he knows and trusts first, and isn't just going to say, make me an offer I can't refuse.
And
everything we know about Jerry Reinsdorf,
right? Clandestine
is how loyal he
the
is.
Next owner. And
yes. Everything we know about Jerry Reinsdorf is he's not going to say, make me the best offer ever. Again, this guy's 88 years old. What does it matter if he's rich beyond belief when he sells this team? He's 88 years old. He may be dead in a few years. So that is kind of what makes me think that this is more real. He called up a buddy. They're in discussions about it. People are saying, oh, he's just trying to get money for the stadium. Maybe, but he's not getting money. The stadium money is gone. It's a thing of the past, and it is just not going to happen. So,
and also, like, threatening to sell the team is not going to get him public money.
Correct.
So that's everyone's like, yes, this is time. Please sell the team. Let's be good.
I saw sell shirts in Chicago, and they weren't green.
Yes. So that I think there is this is something he's legitimately considering. I think this is something that still is a ways from happening, still is a long shot for happening. But I think that all those factors I mentioned above kind of finally have triggered a little bit of like, okay, the plan was always for his family to keep the Bulls, sell the White Sox when he died. Maybe this is something he should look at now before he dies.
Yeah, and he probably doesn't have the energy. He has this. He's lost this fight for public money in Chicago, and he probably doesn't have the energy, to necessarily start a whole fight with, moving him somewhere and doing that whole thing. And he's probably watching what's happening in Oakland and being like, do I really want to stain like whatever legacy I have left in Chicago by, pulling a Fisher and like, doing all this, So I feel like he's probably, thinks that this is the best way to extricate himself from the situation. The weird thing is that Dave Stewart's connection to Nashville, I think, is like, is the selling to Dave Stewart, would that kind of hint that Dave Stewart is then going to have the energy to say, I'm moving this to Nashville, where I wanted to have a team. I have connections. I have people who are going to build a stadium for us in Nashville. And as soon as you have a stadium, then the threat of moving is a bigger deal. I think there is some comparison to Artie Moreno. I think Moreno, when he did say he was going to sell it, it was after he lost the fight to get more money for a new stadium. Yeah. So there's like this, how much energy they have. There's always this fight for a new stadium, which I think is, it's actually one of the most rotten things at the core of baseball.
Yeah. It's bad for sure. It's interesting too. Another team in the AL Central might be available. The Pohlad family putting the Twins up for sale, or at least exploring the possibility of a sale.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things here. Like, you think about the Twins, it's obviously a smaller market than Chicago. So you could look at the White Sox and kind of dream big and say, hey, wait, so some really deep pocketed owner could come in and buy the White Sox, change the franchise the same way that Steve Cohen's trying to change the Mets. Like, that's the dream scenario if you're a fan of the White Sox. If you're the Twins, you're probably not getting a buyer quite like that, but you're more enticing as a franchise in some ways because you've got a beautiful ballpark already, so you don't have to worry about getting a ballpark. Your team's not going to get moved.
Yeah, but do people buy this with the idea of how good is it already, or do they buy it with the idea of, ooh, if I get a ballpark,
I think they just buy it with the how much money can I make from this?
Yeah, what's the surrounding area? That's the big thing now. Everyone wants the battery like Atlanta has. People forget that the Lerner family in D.C. did this too. They said they were going to sell the Nat, explore. People get all excited. When the news is they're going to explore a sale, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sell. Same thing with Minnesota. It happened with D.C. and it could happen again here. They're not necessarily saying we're selling the team, right? They're exploring what's out there. And if they don't like it, they're going to hang on to it. And that's what happened with the Lerner family too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no downside to holding it.
Yeah, owning a team is one of the best investments in all of investing, because yes, it may not make a bunch of money in between, but it is so rock solid in terms of how much it'll gain over time. And if you are that rich, you actually just want something that has absolutely no cratering possibility, and will just, probably give you a 50%, return or 100% return. I mean, Jerry Reinsdorf, in your story, he bought it for $20 million.
I know. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, if he wanted to get rich off this team, he could have sold it 10 years ago and enjoyed it while he was still maybe like had his energy and stuff. And I know, he has told people close to him, sources told me that his health is like the best thing he has. And that's all fine and well. Maybe he is in great health. That was the other thing people worried about with this news. However, he's still 88.
Right.
Still is, if he wanted to just, sail on his yacht, he could have sold the team 10 years ago and still made a boatload of money.
Right.
But
he's probably looking at his team being like, they're not gonna win a World Series in the next 3-4 years. And
I hope Jerry is realistic enough and knows enough about baseball to know that what you just said is true. They're not winning a World Series in the next 3 years. I will eat a rack of hats if that happens. Like, I'll go into Lids and just eat all the hats. Just like Pac-Man, I'll just gobble them all up.
Yeah.
Since we're in Chicago, we've been talking about teams getting eliminated from the playoffs and what's next in the offseason. We're going to talk about a few teams that didn't make the playoffs over the course of the next few weeks and what their off seasons might look like. Figured the Cubs would be a natural fit as a good place to start, a team that some folks thought would be in this postseason. They didn't make it. And I saw Jim Bowden had some rankings of the non-playoff teams on The Athletic. He put the Cubs 7th on that group. I thought that was actually a little on the low side, because there's still a lot to like on this roster. And more specifically, there's a lot to like in their young core, some of which has arrived in the big leagues, but a lot of which is still to come, probably in 2025 and beyond. The question we were wrestling with throughout the season, though, was, how did the Cubs build a team where they spent this much and they didn't get more out of their roster? Because they don't have a $35 or $40 million AAV player on this roster, but they've got a lot of 10, 20s. 15, 20s, but Swanson, Bellinger, Happ, Suzuki, Taillon and Shohei Managa on the pitching side, Nico Horner, who they extended while he was under club control. So they have a bunch of guys that are not cheap, and they have a team that's solid, but they don't have a team that is a perennial contender just yet. What's the missing ingredient for the Cubs? Like, when we talk about them, it seems like they get kind of put in the same bucket as the Giants. They should be very active in free agency every winter. They should be able to contend for any free agent they want, all the way up to the top of the market, in theory, based on who they are as an organization. But I don't know. It feels like there's something that's not quite aligned between ownership appetite for spending at that level and fan demand for the Cubs to do something to get better and try to win another World Series.
There's this thing in fantasy where you try to identify the top, in an auction room, which is most like what free agency is like, where people are spending fake money to buy these players. And in an auction room, what you'll see is you kind of, one of the best strategies is to determine what the very top players are going for, and then try to get one of the top players with the least amount of overpay. That seems to be kind of the Cubs strategy. It's like, we want to get one of the top 3 to 4 free agents this offseason, but we don't want to get the very top one because we think that you're paying way too much over the top. We want to get that next one where we are paying a little bit of a premium for Dansby Swanson, but we're not paying $280 million to Xander Bogaerts. We're paying $180 million for Dansby Swanson. And in each of these sort of singular decisions, I think you say, good deal. Like, I think you look at Seiya Suzuki and you say, good deal. I think you look at Dansby Swanson, for the most part, you say, good deal. It's a little bit long, but you say, probably good deal, right? Jameson Taillon, 4 years and $56 million, like, decent deal.
Yeah.
I think you say a decent deal. Cody Bellinger, I think he should opt into that. I hear some, there's some rumors that he's going to opt out. I would not do that. Your bat is not special right now. If you're Cody Bellinger and you're on the open market and you're no longer a center fielder by age. So for very long. So I would keep that $50 million or at least the $28 million this offseason.
Yeah. Like a Max Fried, Nathan Eovaldi kind of guy, I think would fit them. My question is always like, you're the Chicago Cubs. Why are we like, I guess,
why not get the number one guy?
Yeah. Why are we looking for the deals?
Yeah.
I think they feel like, I mean, it's about the pitching for them. I think adding an impact starter would help them a lot. If they're going to get to that 90 plus wins that Craig Counsell has kind of like verbally said, like, we need to get there, we need to get better. You kind of have to get some of these impact guys who are going to push things across. I think
a starter's a good idea. One nice thing about what's happening in Chicago is I think their youth is underrated. Like Pico Armstrong is, I think, maybe the best defender in baseball at his position.
Right. I think that's a position full of great defenders too. I mean, he's possible platinum glove center fielder.
And the offense was coming around a little bit. Michael Busch was like really decent last year, and I like Ben Brown as a starter. So those are three young players. They'll get some pitchers back from injury, and some like Porter Hodge was pretty good, and I think the Nate Pearson deal was good. So there's they're doing a lot of things that are good. I sometimes I look at this and I say, why aren't they better? I think maybe it is, go get a real good starting pitcher. Like get a top two guy to put next to Steele.
Sometimes you got to shot in the arm everybody a little bit. It feels like they've been kind of making those like good deals that like you said, good deal. Wouldn't it be cool if the Chicago Cubs got a big name, got a blockbuster? Like, what would that change in the Central? I don't know.
And looking at what they have now, even if Cody Bellinger opts back in, they would have, between this year and last year's luxury tax payrolls, they would still have about $45 million. I say get Corbin Burns.
Yeah, at least push yourself up to that threshold. If you don't want to go in the threshold, fine, that's your ownership's choice, but you should live near there.
Get an ace. Get Corbin Burns. Go for it. Spend some money, because you actually do have some young players that are going to provide you depth and fill in the holes and play the places. Oh, where do we need a guy? Oh, we'll put Michael Busch there. He might not be the best glove, but we will put him there. Cody Bellinger, he's going to play first. Maybe he'll play a corner outfield, whatever it be. Like, I think you go and you get Corbin Burns, and makes this whole team better.
I just like how every time we have Britt on the show, both of you start attacking the Brewers in even subconscious ways. Like, that you want to put Corbin Burns on the Cubs now?
What did I say?
You're talking about David Freese. Today, you've said nothing. But it's always one of you, and it's always the day Britt's here. And I don't know why this happens.
No, I'm an instigator.
I don't know. Yeah, it just brings that side of Eno
that
out.
Much.
Yeah, I know you don't. You don't think about the Brewers that much. You should. At the beginning of the show, I said, "Is this the Dream World Series?" My Dream World Series would have been Brewers Guardians, and it would have been 42 degrees in Cleveland, and I would have been there for Game 5. And I'd have been hammered drunk behind home plate with Angels wings. Like, that's my Dream World Series. Okay, that's what I wanted. And I didn't get
low television ratings.
I don't care about TV ratings. I'm not getting rich off that.
That's true.
Am I drinking beer at the ballpark? Is my team playing? Perfect.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see. I don't care who the Brewers have to beat to get that first World Series. I just want to be there when it happens.
That was my pushback on the whole question. Was like, I don't know. Dream World Series is for Yankees and Dodgers fans, it's the Dream World Series. For everyone else, it's kind of like, okay,
if you're covering it, that's a lot of travel. It's kind of a pain.
Yeah,
I could drive back and forth for every game of Brewers Guardians. I could have nacho helmets and hazy IPAs and sausage, everything I want.
It's all about what's good for us. My Dream World Series, Nationals, Orioles. I can spend the entire time at home.
At home.
Yeah, I mean, you had it for a long time, and sadly, it's not an option for you to have the Dream World Series just right there, where you could go to both parks nearby. It's the best you could do now would be like what? Angels and Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've done that drive. I've driven the 5 a million times. I've done that drive so many times. I would
let us know.
I'm tempted a little bit. We got through the Baseball Writers Association. We get tickets. I got some Dodgers tickets, but I think I'm going to let the family go do that. The in-laws that are down there, they can do that. I don't need to drive all the way down.
was very kind of you to share that. But if you'd like to share your Dream World Series with us, you can do that in our Discord. The link is in the show description. Be as descriptive as possible. Be more like me in the description if possible. I think I was very specific with what I really want to see in the World Series someday. Give us a follow on Twitter. You can find Britt at Britt_Droli. Find Eno at Eno Find me at Derek Van Riper. Find the pod at Rates and Barrels. It's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.